My Bible teacher explained it to me. He says neighbor is not only those that live in your community. He said that everyone should be considered your neighbor, and you help them. And that was one of the things that sparked me. I said, I want to help people,
Wow.
and that's what started sparking the whole thing.
So, from that initial spark, at that time, what were you doing in your life? Were you already in the medical field?
No, I was a security officer at
Wow.
Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I was an outside contractor, and once I got clear on that script, I started helping the doctors, the nurses, and with them because my job was just to stay at the desk. But after I read that, I said, no, I got to help out. I would go down 4 o'clock every day at the garage in the basement because it was real dark, and a lot of the women were coming from the main buildings, and they go down there, and I said, there could be my mother, my aunt, my sisters, my cousins. I said, I started escorting them to their cars. Never knew their names and whatnot, but escorted them. And then one day, the one of the executives from Albert Einstein came over. He says, we're going to fire your company because the guards wasn't doing their job. He says, but he says, you're unusual. He says, you do your job. He says, you can always have a job here. So my thought was, wow, I can get a job making a little more money. They say, you'll be in the custodial department, but only for 6 months. But my thought already was, once I get my foot in the door, it's not coming out.
Yeah.
And so they went to hire me. They said, but you have to pass an interview. So I went over for the interview, and I was sitting outside, and all of a sudden someone said, Mr. Warner, can you come in? And I came in, and I looked in my eyes open. I said, Barbara. She said, you're Daryl? I said, yes. She was one of the women that I escorted to the garages every day.
Wow.
So my
That's a
interview
small
was
world.
coffee and cake.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
once I got in, after 6 months, they loved my work. I was scrubbing those bathrooms like they couldn't be scrubbed, and people were coming from other buildings using the bathrooms. And my supervisor said, why? He says, you got the cleanest bathrooms. And so I had wrote him a letter.
Yeah.
I said, I'm a student of the Bible. I says, I'm learning hard how to be a better worker. I said, and I'm going to be your best worker. And up until the day he died back in 1998, he said every day for 19 years he would read that letter that I wrote him. And he said he thought that it was very inspirational.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. I'm getting goosebumps just listening to it, man. That's honestly amazing. And I mean, while we were prepping, you started telling us a little bit about your childhood and how that, the 40 different jobs that you had before getting to this final position. I'm not saying final because you're done.
No,
because
I'm not
I
done
think
yet.
I think you got a little bit, couple other interests to pursue.
Yes, I do.
From what I understand. So tell us a little bit about that childhood, growing up in that household where you were one of 11 children.
Yes.
So what was that like?
It was crowded and whatnot, and one of my sisters lived home. The other two had lived someplace else, but we had to learn to work together. My father used to be in the Army, and he handled us like we were soldiers. We had to make sure that the beds was clean. He said, I want to drop a quarter and I want it to bounce off the bed. And that's how he had us, and we learned how to work and clean. But I had it in my early childhood, I was a sickly child. They didn't expect me to live because I had jaundice and I had other medical problems. And my mother was stressed out about it. So my aunt said she would take me, and she nursed me back to health. It took over 2 years.
Wow.
And her and my mother was fighting because she didn't want to give me up.
Yeah.
But all through my junior high school and public school, I mainly was in the hospital because I was a chronic asthmatic. So they didn't expect me to live. And I would get 6 shots a day when I was in the hospital. I would spend at least 5 or 6 days in the hospital under an oxygen tank. Back then, how they treated asthma, they put this plastic tent over you, open up the oxygen, and it would be freezing cold.
Yeah.
So I went through all that. And then when I got into high school, I wanted to do other things, because I played chess. I became a chess champion and helped win a championship with the junior high school I went to. But when I got into high school, I said, I don't like sitting around. My mother said, well, you can't do this and that. So I went to the high school coach at Thomas Jefferson High School in Brooklyn, and I said, I want to join the track team.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you're an asthmatic. He says, I could breathe because I'll be, and I said, but if I could prove to you that I could run, would you let me run? He said, yeah. I said, give me a year. Within that year, I trained. I was going out late at night. My parents didn't know. And when I would run one block, I'd go, and I stop and go back home. And every day, I made it a goal to go a little further. I started exercising, eating right. And then one day, I decided I gave myself a test. And I ran in 0-degree weather. I ran 12 miles. And when I came back, I wasn't even huffing and puffing. So that September, I asked if I could join the track team. The coach remembered me. You're that asthmatic. He said, come to Prospect Park. So they were doing the long distance running.
Yeah.
And we ran, and out of 24, I came in second place.
Wow.
So they put me on. Yeah. So they put me on the varsity team, and within 2.5 years, I became captain of the track team, and I broke 3 cross-country records for my school.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for not giving up. And that seems to be a reoccurring theme, right?
Yes, yes.
You seem to keep pushing through regardless of what adversity is there. And we appreciate that as students and as young people looking up to someone like you. You know, you serve as a role model for us with the way that you never say no. And you keep pushing your abilities to the next level, and you know, we want to do the same to be more like you, Mr. Warner.
Thank you.
No problem. It comes from the heart. So, Mr. Warner, when you were growing up, you mentioned that other than you're dealing with sports, you had to deal with a lot of political chaos that was going on through the civil rights movement, right?
Yes.
So can you tell us your firsthand experience with that? How was it like to grow up during the civil rights movement? And did you feel safe? Did you feel discriminated against?
Oh, yeah, all of that, you know, as a young person, and especially, you know, my parents, they were a good source of encouragement because they went through much more than I did. But they always taught me, they said, look, if you work hard, if you don't look at a person's color of their skin, says you will succeed in life. Wow. And that was the formula that I used because I saw the riots, the race riots. Wow. I was going to PS 328 when they decided to, when the Supreme Court made the ruling that the schools had to be segregated. The buses was green back then. They bused me from a school that I was going to 4 blocks from where I live to a school that was 3 miles away, and it was in a Caucasian neighborhood, and they were, you know, throwing things at the buses, breaking the windows and everything. And I told my parents when I went home, I'm not going. They said, no, you're going back. They said, this will make you stronger. You know, he said there are, and he told me pure and simple. He says there are white people out there, a lot of them, that are willing to help you and give you a chance if you have the right attitude. And my father was right. And I made friends with, I'm hoping to look him up and see him. We became friends, and he would share his sandwiches with me. I can't remember his name right now, it's in my head. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he would share his sandwiches with me, and he would, any Caucasian students mess with me, he was right there helping me out. And when any African-American students was messing with him, I was there for him.
Wow.
And he always told his parents about me, and they said, oh, we'd love to meet him. And when they met me, 2 months later, they moved out to California.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, when they saw that I was African-American, they were shocked. And him and I, we hugged each other and we cried, and we said that one day we'll be together. But my father-mother point was proven true. He saw me for what I was and not for the color of my skin, and we were like brothers. And I had some of that going all through the years that I was growing up, and I never look at a person's color of their skin.
Yeah.
You know, and even when I help, as they say, African Americans or minorities, I help everyone. Everyone is included.
Yeah. And so while we were visiting the lab, you mentioned how some students sometimes have issues with their lab members.
Right.
And you told me how you address that. I want you to share that with the audience, because I think that your experiences as
Right.
a child shaped who you are as an educator now and as an influencer of the future generation.
Yes.
So what do you tell people whenever they say, I can't work with my group?
Yeah, sometimes a student will come up to me, even though they should go up to the course director, they would come up to me and they said, well, Mr. Warner, I don't want to work at that table. And so I already know that they have a problem, cultural, religious, or whatever. And so I'll ask them, I said, so what is the problem? Of course, they always lie about it. They're not going to come out and tell you that they're prejudiced or whatnot. But I tell them, I said, look, let me tell you something. Let me introduce you to your team. They said, but can't you just, I said, no. I said, I wanted you to tell me what the problem was. I said, now I'm going to go over and introduce you to your table mates. I said, tell them what you told me.
Yeah.
I said, but 100% of the time they have cold feet. And then I told them, I said, you know why I was going to bring you up to the table? I said, because let me tell you something. You are a lifesaver. You're here because you're learning how to save people's lives. I said, how can you tell someone who's Jewish that you're not going to give them mouth to mouth, or someone African American or someone Hispanic?
Yeah.
I said, if you have that type of attitude, you don't need to be here.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? They turn out to be the best students.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really do. So,
That's
don't play that, And like I said, all my life I've been through a lot. I don't let it stop me. And I want to encourage young people. I want to be in the forefront of their education, and that's why I'm still here at the Sophie Davis CUNY School of Medicine.
Well, I appreciate that you're tackling the prejudice with love, and I think that is the solution. That you have to start treating everyone like your brother and sister, and like family, and stop worrying about the superficial aspects that we define each other with. And working in the cadaver lab, I'm sure seeing that everyone ends up in the same place, looks the same on the inside. It must seem silly that we've spent this long as a human species. We pride ourselves on our intellect, and we're so simple in the way that we're discriminating against each other.
Yeah.
It just seems very silly.
It's part of our imperfection.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have to tackle it, and thank
Right.
you for doing your part with that. So tell me how you got into acting and being a comedian. So that whole part of your life.
Well, I always want to make people happy, and what happened was one day at Thomas Jefferson High School, they were having a program. They started a program to introduce acting into some of the underprivileged schools. And Robert Earl Jones gave us a visit. He's the father of James Earl Jones, the one that does the voice of Darth Vader. And he visited, and I kind of liked it, how he was explaining about acting and how you can make people happy and things like that. And so they started a workshop, and I was one of his first students. And it took off from there. Started learning about poetry. I started writing poetry. And I said, man, I want to make people laugh. So I started making up jokes and whatnot, and started visiting nightclubs and different nursing homes. I always wanted to make people laugh. So I wrote my own material because I never used curse words. After I read the Bible, and it says how all people from all walks of life should be able to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
I decided I will not have any curse words in my comedy. I said I could make people laugh without cursing, and then I did.
Yeah.
They had the gong shows in the 70s in the clubs. I never got gonged.
So what's that?
That's they have them. It used to be a show called The Gong Show. If you was that bad in acting or whatnot, and they gong you off. So they did it in the clubs too.
Yeah.
A lot of comedians got gonged. I never got gonged. I wrote my own material, and I used it off of the audience and whatnot. And I had a friend named Daryl Signor. He was my partner.
Yeah.
And we both went around, and I just loved making people laugh. I would make up things and just enjoy seeing children, seeing older people, seeing young people laugh. That was my
Yeah.
thing. And I worked hard at being a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And that's amazing. And I mean, you didn't stop there. That
No.
was just the beginning of helping people, right?
Right.
And
Yeah, that was the beginning, you know, and like I said, and I was master ceremonies. I did a little modeling.
Wow.
And yeah. One of the greatest roles that I ever played, because you had asked me about that, was I played the African king. And it was before the princes and some of the kings from the United Nations. They were having this special thing, and they went to all the theater workshops to look for African American male to play the part, and I won the part. I wanted to do it because I wanted to be there,
Yeah.
you know. And so Robert L. Jones trained me for like 13, 14 hours a week. I was so tired sometimes. And he said, no, you have to do it like this. And then one of the kings lent me their embroidered robe. It was red with pure gold in it. Man, I felt like a king. And I did a 45-minute monologue before all of them. And I received a standing ovation afterwards.
Well, I'm sure you're gonna get one today too. That's awesome. So you were the original Black Panther. All right, Wakanda forever. So so tell us a little bit about how you use some of those abilities in the classroom.
Right.
You know, to connect to the students and give a unique approach to your teaching.
Right.
You know, in somewhere where it's not, you know, a laughing matter.
Right. Yeah. I took my acting skills and I used them in the classroom to help the students. You know, like I said, I was a comedian. At times, with certain situations, you know, I make them laugh and whatnot, and they appreciate it. And they say, Mr. Warner, you always make us happy. And then there was other times, like I've used my skills to sit down and talk with the students. And especially, you know, some of them had problems and whatnot. They would come in early in the morning. I could tell. They would come in early in the morning. And they said, you know, I said, everything okay with Mr. Warner? Can I talk to you? Because they all trusted me.
Yeah.
Because they knew that whatever they say to me would stay right there. And they knew I cared about them. Some of them sometimes come in, they were a little hungry and whatnot. And I could tell. And I said, come out the lab. They said, why, Mr. Warren? I says, you're hungry. How can you tell? So I've been doing this for 40 years. and I would give them a few dollars, and I said, go across the street to the cafeteria, get something to eat. Don't come back until you finish eating. And they were really appreciative. And some of them had other issues with their parents and whatnot. And I straightforward, you know, go home, you need to talk to your parents.
Yeah.
And even sometimes the dean would ask me, we had a former dean, he would ask me from time to time to talk to some of the students with certain problems and whatnot. And I helped them to appreciate that the parents work hard for them, paying the bills. I said, you're in your room sleeping, your parents in the other room. What do you think they do when they pray to God? They had tears in their eyes. Help me pay the telephone bill, help me pay this, you know, paying Brother Edison, taking a little from Brother Edison to give to Sister Bell and whatnot to try to make the. I said, you got your iPod, you got everything. I said, you have nothing to worry about. I said, all they ask you to do is go to school and get your education. So I don't play. I always tell it like it is. And they know, because some of the students tell them, say, speak to Mr. Warner. But if you speak to Mr. Warner, he's going to tell it like it is. And that's what young people need to hear it like it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of adults sugarcoat stuff and whatnot. And I tell them, I say, I'm not here to sugarcoat. I'm here to help you better your life.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Yeah. It's a mutual respect that gets developed, and I think that it's important to treat them like you were mentioning before the show, that you don't refer to them as kids.
No.
Your sons or daughters.
That's right. They're my sons and daughters, or men and women.
Yeah.
I never call them children or kids. And when it was interesting, one Jewish student, after about 2 weeks, he came into my office early in the morning, and he says, Mr. Warner, can I talk to you?
Yeah.
I said, sure. He says, why are you like that? So I started laughing. I says, why I'm like what? Like that? I said, like what? He says, why do you do things for us? Why do you care about us? Why do you spend your money on us? I said, I do all these things because I love you. And I said, and I want you to succeed in life. And he thought that was strange. And he says, well, can I time to time talk to you in the morning about different things?
Yeah.
I said, sure. He was coming every morning. He was there like 6:45, and we had our conversations. Then he says, I have a girlfriend. He says, can you give me some suggestions? And I gave him some suggestions.
Okay.
And he said, can I bring her? Can you check her out for me? I said, he brought it to the lab. And we sat down, the three of us talk, and I told him about relationships and how the two have to work together. Then he was getting married. Then he got married. He says, can you give us some advice on marriage and whatnot? So I gave him a book called, The Secret to a Happy Family Life.
Uh-huh.
And it had everything concerning before you get married all the way to when you have children. And he says, wow, then he got married. Then he came and he says, oh, we're going to have a child. He says, we want your input. And it was like, and he graduated 2 years ago. And he brought his whole family. He had 7 brothers and sisters and his parents. They came to the graduation, and their parents hugged him. They said, thank you for taking him under your wings. They said, he learned so much.
Yeah, well, speaking of marriage and weddings and relationships, why don't you tell us how you met your wife?
Well, it was interesting because I was living with my mother at the time, and she had a 4-bedroom house, so she's a Jehovah's Witness, and from time to time people come out of town, and they call her up, because they don't have no place to stay. So this one particular time, she told me, she said, 2 sisters going to come, and they're going to stay with us for the weekend.
Yeah.
I said, okay. I went about my business, so I came in, and and I knocked on the bathroom door. I said, who's in there? She said, Grace Badner. I said, okay, I'll see you later on. So the next day I go to a meeting at the Kingdom Hall, and there she is sitting next to my mother. I said, boy, this honey looks fine. I call her, I said, dark chocolate. and so we started talking when we got to the house and whatnot. And I said, will you be coming back? She said, yeah, I'll be back in 3 months. But she didn't come back. The other sister came and she didn't. And I was nervous. And I told her, I said, can you give her my number? Tell Sister Wagner to give me a call. And they said, okay. And she gave me a call, and that started off. Now, back then, we only had beepers. You didn't have cell phones, so you had to use the rotary phone. That's what we had. So the first month, the bill was $150, telephone bill. Then it went to $200. Then it went to $400. Then it went to $600. When it got to $600, we said, you know what? We need to get married.
Yeah.
So, and we saw each other only about 6 times before we got married. We planned a wedding over the phone. We ordered all the cards and everything over the phone, food, everything. We did it all on the phone. And then I made one trip to Philly because she had some of the brothers get the directions and everything. But me, I'm a thorough person.
Yeah.
If I could follow those directions, then they're all right. But I'm glad I went down there. The directions and everything was wrong. We got it all together, and then we got married. So May 12th will be 28 years.
Wow. Congratulations to you both. So let's hear her side of the story, because we know you're a workaholic. So how does it feel to be Mr. Warner's wife?
Well, let me just say, it's a privilege and an honor.
Mm.
My husband is an extremely hard worker.
Yes.
He loves people.
Amen.
People stop him just going places. They just like him. They start talking to him. One time we were driving on the New Jersey Turnpike, and we stopped at the rest stop, and we knew they were Amish couple. And they turned around. They looked at the both of us, and the wife, very sweet woman, she turned around, she looked at him, and she touched his arm. Just as gentle, like she was his mother. And all of a sudden, we just started talking. And it was like we knew each other for years. But as far as anything else, my husband does get very little sleep.
Yeah.
Many nights, it may be 1, 2:30 in the morning. I may wake up, may have to go to the bathroom. And I look up, he's staring at me. Daryl, why aren't you asleep? He said, I'm watching over you. Now, any man that's watching over his wife with no makeup on her face, a scarf tied around her head, is looking at a ghost. And I really appreciate that. And he's been more patient with me over the years than I could ever be with him. And I appreciate him. His heart is like gold. He helps anybody. He will give his toe on his feet if necessary. And I'm so grateful that he's been able to help the students over the years. Mm-hmm. He has made friends big and small. And he is truly an adorable, a very sweet, kind-hearted person. And I'm thankful to have met him. I'm thankful I'm still with him. And we're going to be going to Lancaster County next month to visit the Amish area. We're going to be celebrating 2 days with our middle son. So I'm thankful for him. He is really a beautiful person.
Wow. Wow. I hope that one day I have someone describe me like that, man. We have our interns crying right now. That's truly beautiful. You don't hear descriptions like that of married couples anymore nowadays. So honestly, truly touching. And it is true. Everything you said about him, from just the brief encounters that I've had, everyone's drawn to him. All my students tell me how much they loved just being in his presence for those couple of hours, and they treat him like he's their grandfather, their father. There's a certain vibe that you give off, or that you kind of give this energy, and it draws people to you, and I think that's from the purity of your heart. Now I could tell why it only took you 5 phone calls to figure it out. I mean, you guys seem very certain. 28 years later, wow.
Yeah, I knew what I wanted, and I went after it.
Oh man, we hope that we follow your footsteps with that too, man. So we're going to take a short 2-minute break, and when we get back, I'd love to hear a little bit about your sons and how you trained them as well to follow in your footsteps, right, and that whole experience. And we'll get into a little bit more about the students, your driving force, and basically more about your life, because it is a life worth sharing. So thank you once again for listening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after a 2-minute break. So don't touch the dial. And we do have a message from our underwriter, so please stay tuned.
Parnell of the Gene Parnell Show honored former Manhattan Borough President C. Virginia Fields for Women's History Month. Miss Fields had a special message for you, the WHCR listener.
It's my pleasure to support WHCR because you know, and I know, and others who listen know, you're one of the last stations where we really can get information about our community, about city affairs, national affairs, from a black perspective. So I think it is important. It is my hope that the support from city, state, and federal elected officials will continue. And I want to make sure that WHCR is knocking on their doors, because I know what they do in other communities. And so as an elected official, I was always pleased to use public dollars to support the work of the station. And I just love what you've done with the renovation of the station. I mean, I encourage your listeners to come there and see the environment, just in terms of what can happen when you get the support. We have to support WHCR, and I'm plugging it in. I'm plugging it in for you because I know the importance of the work.
Thank you,
okay?
Virginia.
And you need the support, so the shout-out is to the listening audience. Support.
If you know the symptoms and get the facts, you'll know the signs of a heart attack. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911.
Pain in your neck, chest,
arms or jaw,
shortness of breath.
Please tell us more. Cold sweats and nausea, tiredness.
It's time to take it
serious. Back pain, stomach pain, shortness of breath. Cold sweats, nausea, dizziness. If you know the symptoms and heed the signs, you'll be around for a long, long time. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911.
Learn a song that could save your life. Get a free download at womenshealth.gov/heart attack.
Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if any sound familiar, call 911. If any sound familiar, call 911.
A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
911.
Texting while driving is dangerous. The driver who is texting is distracted, putting himself, pedestrians, and other drivers at risk. Statistics show that 25% of all car accidents, or 1 million car crashes a year, involve a distracted driver. In 2012, 3,500 people were killed and 400,000 were injured due to distracted drivers. It never makes sense to read and text while driving. So if it's an emergency that you have to make a phone call, in some cars, you can pair the car's Bluetooth with your cell phone and keep your hands free. So please, for the safety of you and everyone around you, keep your eyes on the road and not on your phone.
This is a journey into sound.
We are on the air. Keep this frequency clear. Do not attempt to adjust your dial.
Don't touch that dial. Keep it locked on WHCR 90.3 FM.
Keep it locked.
The voice of Harlem.
Turn it up.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Health in Harlem here on WHCR 90.3 FM. My name is Giorgio Maloof, and today we have Mr. Warner, his lovely wife, as well as our radio interns and Nadine Oselli, who's operating the cameras. We were just talking a little bit about Mr. Warner's upbringing, his passions, and we wanted to, and as well as his relationship, how he met his wife. She put us to tears, describing him. The love is very clearly exuding between them. And 28 years strong, coming up in less than 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So, or just about. Mm-hmm. So, ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to continue the discussion by asking about the product of their love, their children. So not just the children that Mr. Warner has adopted from the CUNY School of Medicine, but also his biological sons. So can you tell us a little bit about your three sons and how it was raising them and the lessons that you've imparted on them?
Yes, again, like I said, my life is guided by the Bible because there's a lot of positive things in it. Now, when it comes to raising my children, I also went by that. Even when it comes to teaching them how to work. And it was so interesting. I read where John, Jesus' father, earthly father, taught him how to be a carpenter because he was a carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
So now I work with cadavers. What could I teach my sons? I taught them to work with cadavers.
Yeah.
I would take them in the lab and train them, all three of them. And eventually all four of us was working with cadavers because I used to transport cadavers for 18 years. I stopped 2 years ago, but all three of my sons worked with me. We would travel upstate to Syracuse, to all the SUNY schools upstate, and bring cadavers back for the medical schools, and all of them worked. And I taught them how to taught them about the cadavers because I self-taught myself anatomy. When in the beginning, that's how I wound up getting into this. I self-taught myself a lot of things concerning anatomy, and so they gave me an opportunity to work in the anatomy lab, and that's where it took off there. But I trained them, and after a period of time, one of my sons became a safety officer. The other one, he's an electrician, and he's a good electrician because I taught him how to be a good electrician. I don't have a license. I don't. I had a private home improvement business.
Yeah.
And I learned how to do everything. I hung out at Home Depot. I learned about electric. I could outwire any electrician. I took a hand-me-down special house that we moved into that was worth $34,000. When I got through it, it was worth $180,000. I learned how to do the windows, the floor. I did everything. The only thing that I didn't do was the boiler. And once I watched how the guy did it, the next time I needed one, I put it in myself. So I taught them all these different skills because I said, one day you're going to be married. You have to learn how to provide for your wife. You have to learn how to talk to them, how to treat them. So I trained them in all those areas. But I have one son, Crandell, who stayed working with cadavers. He wanted to give up. He started crying. I said, no. But he can take any part of the anatomy and dissect it like an artist. Expose arteries, nerves, veins. He's over at Cornell. He's the manager of their lab there.
Wow.
And just as the students love me here, they love him over there because I trained them the same way.
I was gonna say, I wonder where he got it from.
Yeah, I always tell them you love them,
Yeah.
treat them good, never look at the color of a person's skin and whatnot, and they just love him over there, you know. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of all of them because all my other two sons are the same way. People gravitate towards them. They love them. With my son, Corey worked here up at City College, and all the officers loved him here, and all the students and whatnot. So all my students, all my sons are raised the same way. I wasn't going to have them treating people any differently.
Yeah.
You know, so it really was very, very, very interesting to see all of us working the same type of job.
So was that one of your proudest moments?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, yes, it was. You know, because I'm proud of my sons. I don't play with them. You know, when it comes to learning what is right and what is wrong, and when they're wrong, I tell them about it. You know, and when I'm wrong, I apologize to them.
Wow.
But I say you treat everyone with kindness and help them keep their dignity. Even if they do something wrong, there's a way of talking to them.
Exactly. Wow. I mean, I wish you trained the rest of the teachers here. Well, I did have actually one of your students. I'm pretty sure Miss Caitlin Walkenfuss. So she was my anatomy teacher in high school. Wow. And when I posted a picture of you and I together, she commented and mentioned how she loved you and she came.
Wow.
You know, she was very happy to see you. And I can only imagine that she either interacted with you in a class, a tour, or something. But she remembered you. You know, and so that definitely carries through. And she was an extraordinary influence as well. So. You know, it when you pay it forward, it does continue to flourish and you build something better, a better future. So thank you again for that. And I wanted to know, with your students though, has there ever been a super proud moment or a funny moment even? You know, like that pacemaker story that you told Nadine.
Yeah, that was interesting. A PA student had asked me, you know, she was falling behind, and she wanted to come to the lab early. You know, I was going to take off from work that day. And my wife could tell you when certain things come up with the students, even if I'm still supposed to be on vacation and whatnot, I'll come back in. Yeah. It's worth it. And that's why I love her, because she's very understanding with that. She knows that twice a year, 3 months each, I'm gone many hours because I'm at the lab helping the students. But anyway, this PA student came. So she came in. I said, okay, come to the lab. She came to the lab at 7. So, you know, she was working on the first cadaver. So I'm in the office, and then all of a sudden, ah! I'm like, what's going on? I said, it's only her and I in here. What's going on? So I happened to go into the lab, and it was the strangest thing. Like I said, you know, you see something interesting every year, you know, and I've worked among like 40,000 cadavers with all the cadavers I've worked with, and I'm always learning something new and finding out something. But this was new, so I go in the lab, and it looks like the cadaver is moving. You know, it's like it's shaking. And she says, it's alive, it's alive. So I'm trying to figure it out, you know. I said, wow, this is a unique situation. And then I noticed the pacemaker was vibrating. So I went and got some shears, and when I cut the shears, it's like the person just laid down to rest. And I said, wow, that was one of the craziest things that I ever saw. There was quite a few, but that was one of the moments.
Did you feel in that moment that it could be that you're actually, like, you saw the cadaver moving? What did you think at that moment?
I said, no way he should be moving. That's what I thought, you know, because, you know, I read the Bible, so it tells you that that can't do anything. So, you know, when I saw that, I said,
we got ourselves a resurrection.
I'm telling you, it looked that way, but it was so funny. And when I first started learning how to embalm, because I'm an embalmer also, and my first body that had the embalm was laying on the table. I came in the morgue early in the morning. His mouth was open, his eyes was open, and I lifted him up so I could pull him further up the table. He said, real loud. That's all. I ran to the back of the morgue. Where they gonna go? I never. I picked up a 2x4. I said, man, then I thought about it. I said, you fool, he's dead. So when I lifted him up, he had some trapped air or something in him, and it came out, and it sounded like he actually said, put me down. I put him down.
Okay, so that sounds like an exciting couple days. So tell us, what's the process to actually embalm a human for medical school versus your regular embalming?
Yeah, because funeral home embalming and medical school embalming is totally different. You know, for the medical school embalming, we need the cadaver to be preserved for quite a period of time, so that the students can dissect it. You know, and there's no mold and stuff on it. So the chemicals you use is formaldehyde, phenol, glycerin, and alcohol. And the process goes like this. It depends on what type of medical needs that the school has. I was at NYU College of Dentistry. I did their embalmings. So I didn't dissect I didn't embalm through the common carotid artery in the neck. I didn't do that because they needed head and neck for dentistry.
Yeah.
You know, but at the other schools I was at, Albert Einstein and other schools that I help out, I do the artery in the legs, and everything is scientific. You know, anything by the book is scientific. You know, to get to the arteries in the leg, perfect. You know, put your pinky on the pubis and then bring it down straight to the thigh.
Yeah.
And right there, open it up, and there's the artery. Now for the head and neck, I would make a valley. Right between, I knew where the jugular vein is because you didn't want to hit that. And I make a little valley, push it down, and then I open it up, and right down there, I would raise the common carotid artery. And then at some schools, they take and they use solutions to filter out the blood out of the arteries. But and then they do the embalming. They have an injection pump, and then they embalm it. Then you. After you finish embalming, you tie up the arteries so that the fluid won't come out. But you can tell if the cadaver is being embalmed, because you feel and you see that it's not, you know, a little tight.
Yeah.
It's a little loose. You know the fluid didn't reach, so then you go to the artery on the other side, and then you come up. And then what I usually do, some of them don't preserve the brain that well, so what I do, I would drill a little hole in the cranial, and then I would shoot 50 cc's of formaldehyde in. And because the brain is the first thing to go. So when I made that, drill that hole, it's like the brain is almost like oozing out. And then I shoot the formaldehyde in it and put a toothpick in it. And then within a couple of days, it'll be gelled up. And then the students could use it.
Wow.
And I shave the hair because the hair is the only thing that don't get embalmed. And for some reason, students are afraid of hair and painted nails. Yeah, I did an experiment one day, and I took 5 cadavers, put on one side of the room with all their hair and everything. I took 5 on the other side, and I shaved them like mannequins. And one by one, I told the students, go to the group of tables that you want to be with.
Yeah.
Where do you think all the students went to? They went to the table where the cadavers looked mannequin-like.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, is the hair still growing? And then, oh, the painted nails, it was like, freaked them out.
Wow. So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned from dealing with these different cadavers? I know how much you respect them, and you take the time to make sure that they're hydrated using your Downy solution. So yeah, he uses fabric softener to mix with water, right? Diluted.
Right, that's right. To spray the cadaver, it keeps the cadaver soft, and we don't have to worry about spraying chemicals. As a matter of fact, that's what launched my career. When I was in the anatomy lab at Albert Einstein, one day I was watching the students and they were coughing. Because back then we sprayed the cadavers with phenol.
Oh, phenol.
Yeah.
Okay.
And formaldehyde. And I saw them coughing and it bothered me.
Yeah.
And I went home. I said, these could be my sons and daughters doing this. And I went, you know how you sleep on something?
Yeah.
So I went to sleep thinking about it. I woke up 1 o'clock in the morning and I made some notes. Then I went back to sleep. When I came to the lab the next day, my career was launched. I said, from now on, what I want to do is to make anatomy labs environmentally friendly for the medical students. And that was my goal, and I accomplished it.
Wow.
And I helped many schools concerning introducing the Downy fabric softener and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because I go to schools and I help them troubleshoot their problems in their labs. They call me up. I help them with their cadavers. If their dean is on vacation and whatnot, I fill in at times, and then they call me for my advice for how to handle things, and I introduce them into quite a few labs, anatomy labs.
Wow. So what schools have you consulted for?
Well, I've done work and helped out at Cornell, Albert Einstein College of Medicine. As a matter of fact, I do a lot of programs in some of the schools, enrichment programs.
Yeah.
I helped start in several schools and whatnot. And so Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Toro College out in Long Island, and the one here in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So many schools. Massachusetts. Been to Massachusetts, helped them set up programs. Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, every year I get calls from these many different schools, and they want me to, to come and help with manage their anatomy labs.
So what stops you from going?
Well, my love for my students here, and especially, they're young. I could use extra pay or whatnot. I don't think that's going to happen. But if it was for the money, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But it's for the students, and I love them so much, and I'll sacrifice for them. So it's worth it. Because I've been getting some good offers from quite a few medical schools begging me to come and help them out. But my love is right here at Sophie Davis CUNY School of Medicine. They're young. I want to get them out of the gate.
Yeah, amen. And so speaking of sleeping on it and coming up with a new solution, you were telling me about your new plastination technique. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's a lot of people know about the thing concerning plastination, where they replace all your bodily fluids with liquid rubber, then it rubberizes, then the whole cadaver gets rubberized, and me, I can imitate things.
Yeah.
And I look through the eyes of young people, and I want to see how I can make it better for their learning. And I've done several different experiments and stuff over the years that I use my own money for. I didn't want to ask for grants and whatnot, because when I do things, I want them doing my way, so that I know it works and whatnot, and not have to go by protocol and all this stuff. So I came up with a type of formula or way of doing plastination that's totally different than what they do. The way I do mine, for instance, say if a lung costs to plastinate a lung, I don't know what the prices are today, but say it's like $1,500, right?
Yeah.
I did one for $7.50.
Wow.
Yeah. But I do it because I want to do it for the students. I'm not interested in money. Several projects that I have done over the years, even CUNY, one day CUNY management from the main office visited me, and they saw something that I was working with.
Yeah.
And they told me, they said, you need to get this patent. So many people have been telling me get a patent, but I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I'm interested in helping my students to learn better. So with this type of plastination, all you have to do is put the organ in a container. No water, no nothing, just in a container. And I use toothpicks to open up the arteries, the nerves, and the veins to expose them. And then when I do the plastination, everything stays in place. And I also did experiment with sea creatures. I have a place where a friend of mine lets me have a area in his lab, and I embalmed 189 different species.
Yeah.
And I took some of them to a junior high school, and the teacher called me up because I invited them to the lab, And, they took the tour. And when they got back and I sent the sea creatures with them, the teacher called up. He says, Mr. Warner, thank you. He says, their learning ability jumped sky high. He says, I have 100% attendance now. and when young people tell me things, I think about it. And some of them that came in the lab wasn't interested really in anatomy. But I said, well, what you interested in? They tell me marine biology. They said, but we can't. And with all the OSHA guidelines and everything, with the liquids and the chemicals, I thought about that. And I modified an embalming solution one day. And I said, you know what? Let me try this. And to make a long story short, they just loved it.
Yeah.
And I did all kinds of species, sea crabs. I did a king crab. That cost me, if my wife can hear it now, but if she had found out back then that I spent $394 on a crab that she didn't eat, we'd probably be divorced by now.
But in your defense, this crab was this large, and we'll actually post a picture of that on the Facebook. I have a picture of Mr. Warner holding it, and it is I would say about 3 feet wide. Yeah. He had a lobster about that size as well, a beltfish, which is like this silver belt-looking fish. It kind of looks like an eel with these sharp teeth. And I'm telling you, my college students were just as intrigued as how you're describing your middle school and high school students. So honestly, it's not like people lose their interest.
Right.
And, I love your collection amongst your other collections. So walking into your office, I saw a collection of different toys. I saw a collection of different model boats, pins, magnets. What else? What else have you been collecting over the years?
Yeah, I collect these and the reason why I collect them, I'm not tied to them like collectors are. I love them and whatnot, but anytime I know that a student needs help, or even not a student, people on the street and whatnot, or people I meet, I take and sell some of them and use the money to help them out. But I collect ships and magnets. I have over 3,000 magnets that I've collected. I've collected some of everything. About 3 weeks ago, I gave all the students a gift, they're little expensive toy cars.
Yeah.
And I had one attached to each one of their lockers for them to take with them. I love them. We got to do something with our young people. Not just say, okay, I'm going to help you. Do it, man. I want to be the first one on the spot to help.
Yeah.
I want to be there, and that's why I'm still at CUNY, Sophie Davis CUNY School of Medicine, because they're coming out of the blocks, and we got to give them as much help as possible.
Yes, amen. On that note, we are going to take our last 2-minute break before we wrap up the show, and we're going to be making way for Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase, who should be here any second now. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. And please don't touch the dial. We will be right back after this break. And just so you guys have a heads up, we do have an announcement about our underwriting. So if you could please find a way to donate to the station. This is the way that we are able to keep running this programming that other commercial stations are not able to do. So if you are able to donate, we appreciate any support that you can provide for us. And we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
Jean Parnell of The Jean Parnell Show honored former Manhattan Borough President C. Virginia Fields for Women's History Month. Miss Fields had a special message for you, the WHCR listener.
It's my pleasure to support WHCR because you know, and I know, and others who listen know, you're one of the last stations where we really can get information about our community, about city affairs, national affairs, from a black perspective. So I think it is important. It is my hope that the support from city, state, and federal elected officials will continue. And I want to make sure that WHCR is knocking on their doors because I know what they do in other communities. And so as an elected official, I was always pleased to use public dollars to support the work of the station. And I just love what you've done with the renovation of the station. I mean, I encourage your listeners to come there and see the environment just in terms of what can happen when you get the support. We have to support WHCR, and I'm plugging it in. I'm plugging it in for you because I know the importance of the work.
Thank you,
okay?
Virginia.
And you need the support, so the shout-out is to the listening audience support.
Hi, I'm Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase. Tune in every Thursday from 8 to 12 midnight for some solid cultural roots music and some sweet lovers rock. Also, informative interviews and giveaways. Right here on the Vinny B Showcase every Thursday, 8 through 12 midnight on WHCR 90.3 FM. Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You are listening to
listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
A little bit of delay on that drop, but you're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM. This is still Health in Harlem. My name is Georgia Malouf, and we have Mr. Warner and his wife here with us. We're about to wrap up before Vinny B of the Vinny B Showcase comes in. So, Mr. Warner, we left off by describing some of your driving forces, your passions, the collections that you've been building over the years, the jobs you've had, your children, your relationship. This was a 1 hour, too short summary of some of the biggest accomplishments and a little bit more about who you are. So I just had a couple more questions along that same vein. So first of all, what is the biggest message that you would want the next generation to take up from your life's work, that you would want them to feel like they should be continuing this part of your journey?
Well, my advice is to learn to love people. Learn to look at a person and not the color of their skin. Because if you can do that as a start, then you know what, you can be in a position to help people, to encourage people, because we need one another. Let's not fool each other. We live in critical times right now, and so much is going on, and everybody has something going on in their life.
Yes.
But if we can encourage one another, push one another to their limits and whatnot, and be kind to one another, that's a big start. And that's why, to me, the Bible is a good guide, because it gives you, it talks about life and everything, but it always talks about it in a positive way. And that's why everything I do is positive, and to encourage one another. And you don't have to be at the front of the line all the time.
Yeah.
You don't have to, give up your position to help someone make it there. I tell the students, the Sophie Davis students, I said, it's not all about the grades all the time. Yeah, we want to get the highest grades and whatnot, but can you give a little time to help someone who really needs help? That's the important thing. To help one another, encourage one another, and work. I always work with the class reps, and I always tell them you leave no student behind. And if I feel that they're not working with the students, I let them know. And you know what? They pick up the pace. One year, 10 students were failing. I went to the class reps and said, and I told them, you're selfish. Yeah, I told him right out. Yeah. He had tears in his eyes, but to make a long story short, he got them together, and out of the 10, only one failed.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what it's all about, helping. I'm always giving them themes in the lab and whatnot to work with, and I find themes that in books and everything, each one teach one. All these different type of themes. I made one up, work like a car wash. Though it has many parts, it has one goal to accomplish and get that car clean.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coaching this next generation and giving them that love to then give to others. It is a chain reaction, and you know, I see it happening. I see the influence that you've had on everyone around you, and hopefully they do continue to pay it forward.